Welcome, everybody. Everyone, I think, is coming into the room on mute. So feel free to unmute yourself and say hi. And
hello.
Hi.
I can even show you my messy office.
Nice.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So great to see everyone here on a Saturday morning. I know, well, Doug is calling us from the East Coast, so it's an afternoon, Saturday afternoon for him.
I'm actually on the way to the airport to pick up my wife.
Oh, goodness.
Oh.
So
Well, you're not on your way yet.
I'm halfway there because I stopped at the university. I'm doing this at the university, and then I'll keep on going.
But you're not in the window you pointed out during your lecture, you said. And
No, I'm in a different window now. I was there this morning though.
Yeah. Well, we might as well just start, don't you think, Adrienne? Because
Yes.
we definitely want to keep this tight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know Louise will help me monitor the room to let folks in. And so good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to have you all here. I see Janice has got her book at the ready, and so does Cindy.
Yes.
I'd
just like to tell you that I first was told about you by a friend who had attended a lecture at the Arnold Arboretum in Boston. And so I found one of your lectures, and then I bought the book. And I was so excited to know about this event because we moved from New England to Southern California, and I loved everything I was growing back there, and I'm so unfamiliar with things here. I have so much to learn, so thank you.
Well, thanks for your interest.
Well, if I can introduce Doug, he's certainly inspired so many. As we showed his presentation for Earth Day on April 22nd in the evening, we had between, I'd say, 60 and 80 folks attend that presentation, and subsequently, purchased the book through our website, as well as a real spike in native plant purchases here from the Land Conservancy. So I would say that, thank you to Doug for inspiring so many. I think really the take home message from your remarks are that we can each make a difference, right? And taking control of our own spaces to do what we can to provide a really rich environment for critters of all sizes, especially caterpillars and bugs. So with that, we're happy to hear from you a little bit more this morning if there's anything that you'd like to share with our group, and then we will certainly have questions from our audience for you.
Oh, I don't have any prepared remarks other than to emphasize you are nature's best hope. And it's not just that you can make a difference, you really need to. It's we're at the point where Earth stewardship is not optional. It's not just for the people who feel like it. Everybody's got to do it. Actually, a neutral approach would be better than what we have now, because what we have now is we've got tree huggers, we've got us, and then everybody else seems to have a license to destroy everything, and that's okay. So it's not okay anymore. No more destroy licenses. Everything we do has to be viewed through a conservation lens, which will be a huge change. But that's our only alternative.
Absolutely. And to kind of get right into it, we have a particularly tough situation that we're currently in Southern California, and California in general. We've had tremendously low rainfall this year, no snowpack remaining in some places. So looking at a very dire drought-stricken year for California and probably a large part of the West. So what would be your take on the likelihood or the outlook for our ecosystems, let alone caterpillars and the like?
Well, we have global insect decline, and everybody's debating what's causing it. And it's been described as death by 1,000 cuts. There's so many different causes, but drought is a major one, particularly in the West. You have the entire West is an extremely species-rich place. You've got a lot of species, but they depend on plants. And when the plants may not be extinct, but they go dormant. They die, and then they're just seeds in the soil, and the insects can't wait. So it's very hard on those insects. I'll give you an example of how the home gardener can make a real difference. That happened with the monarch. It was probably back in 2013 when it was the low point of the eastern population. And a couple things happened. And one of them was a huge drought in Texas, along with fires right along the migration route as they were moving south to Mexico. They had to fly through all that, and there was no forage. I mean, there was no nectar for these butterflies, except in people's gardens where they had watered. And the few butterflies that made it because of those people's gardens where they watered. So I'm not encouraging you to go water all of California because you don't have the water to do that, but your little garden can make a huge difference for some things like that. And of course, your monarch's in terrible shape, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine the water use for irrigating some native plantings is much lower than irrigating for a lawn or for other types of ornamental.
There's no doubt about that. But you have to keep them alive. So, no rain is that's bad news.
Absolutely. Well, and at the Land Conservancy, we have a native plant nursery where we're propagating 60 local species to the peninsula and really encouraging homeowners to select from our lists to plant in their garden, even to augment what they may already have. What advice might you give to even a novice gardener who is interested in putting native plants in their garden, but may not know where to start or what to choose or how to think like a bee or a caterpillar in that regard?
Well, you've got a wonderful tool called Cowscape. That I would spend some time on that. It's every plant species in California is georeferenced there. So if you pull up a plant species, there's little dots all over California showing you exactly where it occurs. So you can do that with a number of species. And I mean, I presumably you know where you live, and you can see which ones belong where you live and which ones don't. You have a very, unlike most states, you've got a lot of different ecoregions in very small areas. So as you go up a mountain, it changes. If you're on the right side or the left side of the mountain, it changes, and you've got rain shadows and all kinds of things. So knowing exactly where you are is going to make a huge difference in the plants that'll survive there. So I can't say, well, plant perennial sunflowers. I mean, I can, but it doesn't mean it's appropriate for every place. But Cowscape allows you to figure out what are appropriate. And they also give all the stats there. So how many caterpillars do they support? The reason we talk about caterpillars is that they're transferring more energy from plants to other organisms than anything else. We're very close to making a keystone plant list for pollinators as well, for specialist bees, I should say, so that you can say, well, which species is going to support more specialists than anything else. Most of the plants are making nectar, and the generalists can use nectar from a lot of plants, but the specialists can only reproduce from particular plants. And those are the ones we want to focus on because the generalists will use those too. So between those two lists, you can make caterpillars and native bees with, just a little effort in plant choice. And that'll make a huge difference in your yard. It'll make a huge difference in your local ecosystem. But the ultimate goal is to have our yards enhance local ecosystems instead of degrade them. In the past, we've carved out nature, gotten rid of it, it's gone, and it's on its own someplace else. Now we're doing that everywhere now. So in most places there is no nature out there. So we've got to put it back.
Definitely. And to your point about specialists, we have 2 endangered butterfly species here. Of course, in addition to the declining monarch, but we have our Palos Verdes blue butterfly, which is obligate to a deerweed host plant, and the El Segundo blue butterfly, which is obligate to a sea cliff buckwheat. So to your point about just needing to find that right plant to provide for that particular species in a specialist capacity.
Are there organized conservation efforts for those? Are people planting the buckwheat in the...
Yeah, that's a primary initiative that we at the Land Conservancy are doing in areas to propagate those host plants and put them out there.
That should work.
Mm-hmm.
It should work. Get them off that list.
That's right. Well, I don't want to hog the microphone. If anybody would like to unmute themselves and ask Doug a question, please feel free. And I could field something in the chat.
I have a question. We moved into a little house here. It has a lawn and an irrigation system and some some plantings around the border that I recognize, and most of which I don't even know what I have. I don't want to start, my husband wants to get rid of the lawn, which is a daunting endeavor. And I don't want to start pulling things out without a plan. I find it a daunting challenge.
Well, I think you're wise. Pick at it. Having a plan is good, but you don't have to have the ultimate plan. Remember, you can change things. But, you know, before COVID, I was going all around giving talks, and I'd hear people say, I'm going to go home and rip out all my lawn. I said, well, wait a minute. Don't do that until you know what you're going to put back. If you do it all at once, it can be expensive, but if you pick at it, it doesn't have to be. So you've got an irrigation system. You know, that right away is a signal that there's something wrong. You've got plants that don't belong there. So you know, I'm at a disadvantage, never having lived in a place like that. How would I have gone about that? I probably would just get rid of the irrigation system. Then you don't have to get rid of the lawn. It'll get rid of itself.
Right.
And
We
you
could
can
just
plant
turn
right
it off. I mean, that'll be a good start.
Yeah, I guess you could just turn it off. Yeah.
Um,
But you know, I don't know when you're planning to sell.
Oh,
And
well,
people say, oh, you have to keep it. You have to keep it for resale. But you know, in the future, I don't know how much irrigation is going to be like. You don't have enough water, and we keep increasing the population. We keep pretending that resources are unlimited when they are not. So that there's going to be a limit there.
Janice, since you're new to the area too, I might just offer that if you come to one of our outdoor volunteer days and talk to one of our team leaders, you'll see the plants in the ground that we're using, and then you can choose from those what you think would look nice in your own yard and understand how, you know, how it might function for you. And we'd be very pleased to do that. I know Cindy Akiyama also had a question. Did you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, Cindy, and ask?
Sure. Well, the first one is when I read about Homegrown National Park, I thought this is too good of an idea. Somebody must have done something with it. So I Googled Homegrown National Park and I saw homegrownnationalpark.org. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about that. What's happening with it? Is there anything active here in California?
Oh, it's nationwide. It's as active as you make it. It is definitely a grassroots organization. I mean, it's our website. The whole idea came about, I don't know, at least 10 years ago, when I was getting statistics together, and one of them was, how much lawn do we have? So in 2005, somebody did a study and said, well, we got 40 million acres of lawn. Now I know it's grown since then, but that's the one everybody uses. I said, well, gee, what would happen if we cut that area in half? Everybody reduced their lawn by half. That would give us 20 million acres. How big is 20 million acres? And I started to add up all the national parks, and it's bigger than most of them combined. So I said, gee, we can make a new park. It'll be at home. We can call it Homegrown National Park. And I started putting it in my talks. For 10 years, I talked about it, but it wasn't until I wrote this book where I actually made a chapter out of it. Then I was giving a talk about 2 years ago, I guess. And there was a woman, Michelle Alfanderi, in the audience, and she was a marketer really from Manhattan. I mean, she had just retired. And she said, you've got to do something with this. And I said, I'm not going to do anything with this. I go out and give talks and I do research. And she said, well, I'll do it. I said, okay. So she created this website. She said, I can't do it without you. And I said, all right. But you know, she knows social media and all these people. And so she got a web designer, and the problem is she's hiring all kinds of people with we have no income. So, that's an issue. But she put it together. She said, you know, let's make a map. People can get on the map and encourage others to get on the map. You just have to put in your location and the amount of area you're going to convert. And the object is to actually build Homegrown National Park, get our 20 million acres. So we've got over 7,000 people on the map now. And if you add up all the places they have converted or are promised to, or, you know, are working on, we're approaching 1% of our 20 million acres. But it's only a couple months old. So
It's only a couple months old. Oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
Brand new.
where you could actually say, I belong to Homegrown National Park. yeah, that's
Oh,
young.
well, that's fast.
So yeah, she's encouraged. She's overwhelmed. People like you that say this is a great idea, and everybody, they'll send emails. They want to do everything at once, and it's just Michelle, and then she throws things at me, and I say I don't have time to do this. Yeah, she says, well, we need a real budget. We can hire people, and that's great. We just don't have it yet. So.
Well, that's exciting to hear about something that's emerging, and probably you'll find some Westerners who want to pull on this end of the map as well.
There are, I mean, you can go on the map and see who else has done it. You can see how many people in your county are on there. So there are Westerners on there. So
Good.
I think that
Noel, go ahead.
I think that as the drought progresses, I'm not real aware of the mechanics of it right now, but my understanding is that many of the water agencies still have the incentive plans in place to remove the lawns and replace them with, I mean, that's more about water than it is about wildlife, but the two kind of go together. My brother lives in San Pedro, and he took out on a big lot. He took all its lawn out, and the LA Department of Water and Power paid him $10,000 in incentives. So
yeah, you can get $2 per square foot.
It's a pretty big deal. Another thought I would share, if you don't mind, is in addition to obviously, I'm a strong supporter of the Land Conservancy and their wonderful work. The California Native Plant Society, people are asking, well, how do I decide what plants to plant and what's the best landscaping for my yard? Is also extremely active in this area. They have a local chapter, and I think they're cooperating in this effort with Mr. Tallamy as well. And a lot of Land Conservancy members are also members of that. And they have some, when we did our yard, I called Barbara Dye, who was then the executive director, and I said, who can I get to help me with my yard? And she said 2 words, Tony Baker. and we got Tony, and Tony landscaped our yard. But Tony's retired now, but he has a partner, Rick Dykesel, who is also a pillar of the Native Plant Society. And I think he is a resource. He's a landscape designer, and he is an expert on California native plants. So if people want to reach out to the Native Plant Society, they can connect with Rick, and that's one very efficient way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, the California Native Plant Society is the biggest one in the country. They've got paid positions, and it may be the only one with paid positions. So it's a real organization, and it is a real resource. So, yep, I encourage you to use it just exactly the way you did. That's where the expertise is. There are a number of real botanists in that society. So take advantage. Most states don't have that. I mean, they all have a Native Plant Society, but they're all volunteers, and they're typically small. And you guys are lucky in that regard.
Or maybe you can get Chris Sarabia, who's the biggest expert of all, but he's unfortunately real busy with the Land Conservancy.
No, I'm here, and so I do serve on the South Coast chapter as well as the state board with CNPS, and we have a lot of resources on our website, the local chapter as well as cnps.org, the state chapter. So plenty of resources, unlimited amounts of information out there. So we're always glad to help and assist, all our local people on their plans, their native plants, whatever they need, really.
And the Land Conservancy has been continuing to sell native plants to the community, but because of COVID, we can't sell them to you out of our nature centers. So it's a sort of no contact sale, and all of your orders are put just outside of our offices on Fridays. So if you order on a Saturday, you wait till the following Friday to pick up your plants. So once you do know what you would like to put in your ground, be sure to check out our website, because we've got a nice resource of very locally grown native plants from local seeds. And I think you'll find that to be a very helpful resource. Other questions for Doug Tallamy?
I'm just wondering, what motivates people to put in the fake grass? Keep seeing those. I keep seeing that happening, and it just is very upsetting. It's horrifying.
Grass is, it's a very strong status symbol. And if the fake grass doesn't require water, but it still sends the "I am with the culture" message. So it's all about us fitting in with what we perceive to be the cultural norm. And grass has been a status symbol for several hundred years now. So it's a symbol of how well you're taking care of what you own from an aesthetic perspective. If we could shift that to how well you're taking care of it from an ecological perspective, we'd be in good shape. And we're moving in that direction. So it's not all bad.
We had a question from Bill about the use of Roundup. He says his HOA uses it extensively and is wondering what your comments might be on that.
Herbicides are a tool, and they can be misused. They can be used effectively. The biggest challenge is, what do we do with our invasive plants? You can't get rid of them unless you kill the root system. There's a number of ways to do that, but of course, herbicides are the easiest way to do that. But it's real easy to overuse them. The genetically engineered crops that allow you to spray Roundup on it and encourage the farmer to then get rid of all of his weeds, that's the milkweed and the asters and all the other things that support everything. So they spray right up to the road and then put in grass. Not in California, I don't know, but the Midwest is crop lawn. All the plants are gone. There's no doubt about why the monarch's disappearing. So from that perspective, it's overused. It's totally unnecessary. We've created a total artificial situation, all in the name of aesthetics. I do think we've pushed that so far to the limit that the pendulum's going to swing back on that now. There's motivation. Money talks. If we said to growers or homeowners, we're going to give you a tax break if you put in pollinator strips, if you get rid of your lawn and put in these plants, they'd do it overnight. A little bit of tax incentive gives you cultural permission and a little bit of cash. So we could turn it around if we got serious about it.
If there are incentives now for putting in the fake grass, is there a way to get rid of that incentive? I mean,
well, I don't know. Are there incentives to put in fake grass?
Are there any? I heard that there were. Is that just a urban legend?
Just the removal of existing water guzzling grass, that there's the incentive to take out. But what you put in, as long as it's drought tolerant, which I guess a fake lawn would
grass is.
Sadly.
Karina has something to offer on this.
Thank you. I live in Long Beach, and our lawn to yard is similar to most cities. You take out the lawn, you get paid on the square footage that you take out, but you have to replace it with, it has to be plant material. You can't so a fake grass would not qualify, and nor would concrete. You can't just pave over your front yard and
yeah, good.
Good. So it does have to be native plants. It has to be, all of them have to be certified as very, very low water. And it's been very effective in Long Beach, hugely effective.
Great.
One more comment quickly on the fake grass. One reason why people plant it, put it down, I believe, is because they have the idea that this isn't just low maintenance, this is no maintenance. I put it down and that's it, which is not really the case. Of course, we've all seen bad looking installations of fake lawn. So
yeah, maintenance is always something to think about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I recognize we have maybe 5 more minutes of your time, Doug, before you need to pick up your wife from the airport. I have one question too, from, in wearing your professor hat and in working with your students now in person after working with them virtually. What do you find in your lessons and your teaching is really resonating with young adults in college, and then even beyond that, what could we maybe be thinking about doing to educate K through 12 in this arena and inspiring sort of the next generation?
I think what resonates, even at the college level, they get to the college level without clearly understanding the connections. So if you come in as an entomologist, you're interested in insects. You don't know anything about plants. If you're a wildlife person, you're interested in vertebrates. You don't know anything about the insects to keep those vertebrates alive, and you certainly don't know about the plants to keep the insects alive. So the connectivity, when it all becomes clear, they always seem to be surprised about that. And then their narrow focus broadens considerably. You can be an entomologist now, but you better be focusing on insect declines. You should be thinking about, how do we get people to turn their lights out? Now, that's not studying insects, but it's sure going to save a lot of insects and things like that. There's a lot of wide eyes when they realize, oh, we got big problems, and there are actually things we can do about it. And it gives them ideas about directions they could go, because they come in very narrow. They're young, they haven't had exposure. They've had much better exposure than we had. I got to junior in college before anybody mentioned the word insect. It didn't exist. And I loved nature. So, I was always gravitating towards it, but insects didn't exist. So at least kids are raising monarchs and things now in school, and we never did any of that.
I'd like to tell on Cindy, if you'll allow Cindy. She was so inspired by your Earth Day presentation that we presented that she was proposing we approach all of our local high schools and make your lecture a requirement. I'm wondering if you've done that in any school districts, if there's been a way to sort of, if there's a sample we could follow on how best to go about doing that.
I get that request all the time. You should talk to all the high schools, all 150,000 of them.
Yes.
So the obvious thing is to make a tailored program.
Right.
And actually, it's not just the high schools. So I actually did a 35-minute program for 8th graders the other day. Realistically, it should be tailored somewhat to the section of the country they're in. But I agree. I mean, the kids should have this. But my full lecture, it's a little bit more than an hour. They never have an hour. They always have these. They have a 50-minute period, and by the time they walk in and walk out, it's 40 minutes. So it would have to be more tailored. But I agree. I should. I keep thinking of ways to fund my research. If I had a little video that they had to pay $5 for, I could support students and everything else off of that. Of course, I've never done any of that, but I agree. It should be out there, and
well,
yeah. When am I going to do that? Right?
I'm looking at Holly, our educator, to see and her reaction.
Holly may come in and save the day on that for California's, or for Southern California, because we do plan to sort of follow that thread and see, and certainly we could figure a way to cut it in half and present it on 2 separate occasions, or to just edit a couple things out and make it the 50 minutes. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you could have class use, or you could have a whole school assembly. Don't they still have assemblies?
They still have assembly.
Hit a lot of kids at the same time. Yeah. So sure. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. I remember in 6th grade, all the kids in our local middle school here were required to plant a dwarf fruit tree. Had to be a dwarf, had dwarf fruit tree. But instead of having an assignment like that, I could see planting a native plant garden and a lot of education going along with that. That's something that you could start by just talking with the school district about maybe changing a little this part of their standard curriculum.
Yeah. When I was in high school, we had an assembly from a marine biologist. And for the next 3 or 4 years, if you asked somebody what they wanted to be, they all wanted to be a marine biologist, because it was the only thing they'd heard about, and it sounded cool, So no, it's a good idea. It's just, on a day-to-day basis, I can't get through my email. So when it comes to doing that. I just haven't done it. No, that's a poor excuse, but
Oh, it's not. It's real.
The story you told about the monarchs getting through Texas, I think you said, just because of people's gardens. Is there anything in writing that we could share on that you know of, or you just know this?
No, yeah, that's the problem. These things come and they happen so fast. I don't know if there were newspaper articles written, but most people weren't focusing on the monarch. They didn't realize that was crushing the population until the following winter when they counted them down in Mexico and they said, where are they? Well, that's where they were. They never got there. So it's putting it together after the fact. And can we go? Is anybody out there with data? I would say no. Now at this point, there is Monarch Watch. There are a lot of people monitoring things. And if it were to happen again, I bet they would have the data. But back then, that Monarch Watch hadn't even started. People didn't realize it was in trouble. So unfortunately, but I drove through there and I could see there, first of all, most of it is rangeland. So it's overgrazed to begin with. And without the rains they usually get, the milkweeds and the other things were just shriveled up and gone. There was just absolutely nothing for those monarchs except the people's pretty yards. So
Yeah, that's a big endeavor, right, to reverse the damages that have been done and try to put things back as they should be. So that's an ongoing effort that at least we at Land Conservancy are undertaking. And we appreciate your time and your message, which I find really aligns with our work and what we're doing. And it's really, it reinforces, at least for me personally too, and sort of stokes up my passions again for even considering things like sunflowers and how important they can be.
I'm looking at those sunflowers. It's a key plant.
So thank you for your time. I appreciate everyone for joining us and asking really thoughtful questions and for putting them in the chat too. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody's questions, but certainly thank you for providing some really great resources in the chat too that hopefully folks can reference for follow-up.
Well, thank you all for your enthusiasm, because that's what's going to make a difference. I go around and I talk, but talk is cheap. It's action. It's action that's going to make a difference, and that's you people. So,
well,
thank you ahead of time. All right, I'm going to the airport. We'll see you later.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.